Tonight, one of two Troy police officers injured in a shootout a little more than a week ago has just been released from the hospital. Officer Josh Comitale went home this afternoon. And as Ann McCloy reports, it was an emotional moment for him and his colleagues.
Applause erupted for Officer Joshua Comitale on his way out of Albany Medical Center. A crowd of his fellow colleagues and supporters so large you couldn't see him.
When you look back at last week events, you didn't know if this day was going to happen. So obviously, it's a tremendous day for Troy PD and for the Comitales.
Comitale spent 9 long days in the hospital. He was shot back on August 22nd while trying to help stop suspected carjacker Thaddeus Faison. Gunfire struck both of the officers' legs. Today, Troy Police Chief John Tedesco offered good news about Comitale's recovery.
His strength is back. His spirits are excellent. That's, I think, 9/10 of the battle. So I would fully expect he's going to return to full duty.
Faison shot Comitale and Officer Chad Klein, who'd been called to help back up Comitale on 112th Street and 5th Avenue. Officer Klein was released from the hospital last week. Today he returned arm in sling to support Comitale, just as he did the day they were both attacked. Chief Tedesco says Klein is also expected to return to work.
I think he'll probably be back certainly sooner than Josh will. But he's doing very well. It's good spirits.
Faison died in the shootout after Comitale returned fire. Faison's death prompted a rally from his friends. Chief Tedesco says he's reviewed surveillance video that captured the shooting and says Officer Comitale's actions were heroic.
I can't explain his bravery. It's off the charts. I think for a young officer, for any officer, to be able to collect your thoughts and continue to protect yourself and others while you're in the midst of being fired on, while you're in the midst of being shot, it's just beyond words.
You are a warrior.
321 status.
What kind of vehicle is it?
You are the very best your nation has to offer.
911.
Multiple shots fired.
They're asking you to lead.
5. We need a Bearcat.
It's up to us.
So 133. I need somebody that's got a visual on where the shooter is.
You must be sound in mind, body, and spirit.
42, where's the officer down? I have a rescue helicopter that wants to land and help.
This is the podcast that will make you the one.
Copy running eastbound.
The one that will bring everyone back.
I believe we have shots fired, shots fired. Give me backup now.
Because no one else is coming.
We're going to have an officer shot. 100 block of East Street.
Suspect is down. Suspect is down.
This is the Squad Room.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Squad Room, the podcast about navigating the challenging terrain of our demanding careers as law enforcement professionals. My name is Garrett Tesla. I'm an active duty sergeant for a sheriff's office here in Southern California, and I'm here to help you learn tactics and strategies for taking care of yourself, your family, and your community. The episode you're about to listen to is actually one of my favorites of recent memory. Josh Comitale of Troy, New York PD has quite the will to survive story. A fantastic guy, just an absolute sweet guy who's really taken such a traumatic or potentially traumatic event and used it as a catalyst towards teaching others, towards bettering himself and bettering and making other officers safe. So can't thank Josh enough for the time that he spent with us on this. If you're new to the show, I highly encourage you to check out some of the other great guests that we've had, like Andy Stumpf on episode 80, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman on episode 62, ATF undercover agent Jay Dobbins on episode 75, Ryan Mickler of Order of Man on episode 67, and a lot more great guests. A lot of things have happened, and you may have noticed if you are listening to the show on a regular basis that I've had a bit of a delay in episodes, probably the longest gap I've had in quite some time. And that's for a couple different reasons. One, completely valid, and I'll talk about it more in a future episode when I've had a chance to wrap my head around it entirely. But many of you, I'm sure, saw, and it was international news, but the dive boat disaster, the Conception dive boat fire that occurred off the coast of California. And that was in my jurisdiction. And as the dive team supervisor, I was heavily involved in that incident and in the recovery effort. And that pretty much took up my entire September. So any efforts to get anything done in that time were pretty much shot. So I think anyone would understand if I explained that. Some other stuff going on as well, just, mundane things, kids going back to school, etc. So had to take a little pause, but we're back with a few new episodes. And my next episode, I'm really excited about as well. I'll tell you a little bit about it here because it leads right into my plug for my sponsor. But I got to go down to ProForce a couple weeks ago and do a live podcast event. And thank you for everyone who came out for that. That was a lot of fun. I got to do something with a live audience and got to interview Aram Cho, better known on social media as 911 Strong. He is an up-and-comer in the social media space, and we had a great conversation, so you can check that out in a few weeks. But I got to spend the day down at ProForce, hanging out with Mikey and the crew. They took such good care of me, as they do with all the customers that I saw come and go. You know, they seem to have a reputation for only handling firemen, or I can't even talk, for only handling cops and taking care of cops at the store, but that's actually not true. They also do any first responder, and they also do security guards. So if you're looking for a new firearm, holsters, equipment, any of the sorts of things that come with it, lights, etc., make sure you check them out in Brea. And if you do go in and you're looking for a light, use the secret password, the Squad Room, and you'll get 20% off a Streamlight TLR1. That's the same light I use on my P320, and I love it. So again, use that code word, the Squad Room, and get 20% off a TLR1 light. If you're an agency rep and you're looking to, get rid of those old aging firearms that you have and upgrade to something like a P320 or a G17 or the MMPs or whatever else you might have, you get a chance. You can go and talk to their sales reps because they're actually in the business of doing full agency transitions, and they've done a lot of them, and they've done some of the biggest agencies in the world. So if you think your agency is big and needs some help, ProForce is the place to go, and they can take care of you on the agency level too. They'll give you no pressure, no obligation quote. Just call the sales department at 1-800-367-5855. Again, 1-800-367-5855, or email them, sales@proforceonline.com. All right, real quick, one last thing before we get to this amazing interview with Josh. Listen to it. You're going to hear some of the radio traffic as well. He did an awesome job. And then at the end of the episode, if you want to support the show, you want to find out ways you can help without spending a dime extra, it doesn't cost you any money. You can actually save money. Check it out. I'll tell you how you can help us out by using Amazon links, how you can save money on Ranger Up clothing, and other affiliates that help support the show. In addition to throwing some love at ProForce if you're able to go down there. So check that out at the end of the show. But for now, here we are with Josh Comitale and his Will to Survive story of shots fired. Josh Comitale, welcome to the show.
Jared, I appreciate the invite. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we connected up like it seems like so many people do these days through social media. And I got to learn your story and invited you on because I think what you're gonna share with us today is a great example of so many of the attributes that we talk about in training, not just on the show, but as in our departments or in our roll calls, and oftentimes the things that we wonder about, and at least that I do, wonder about how will I respond if ... right? And so many of us have these questions in our mind. We run through scenarios, and then there are people like you who have been presented with a situation where you no longer have that question hanging over your head about what you would do. So before we get into that, though, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you work and the type of agency you're with?
Absolutely. So I am a 11-year veteran of the City of Troy Police Department. It's upstate New York. We're a 130-man department. The city's about 10.5 square miles, 50,000 or so people. At the time of the incident, and now I'm primarily an afternoon. I was afternoons patrol / evidence technician then. Now I'm now I'm a detective on the afternoon shift. So I am currently on our SWAT team. I was on our SWAT team then. I'm a firearms instructor, chemical agents instructor, general topics, like I said, crime scene technician, and I've worked the gamut from patrol, pretty much everything other than being promoted to supervisor, because I just never had the desire to
You're not going to offend me.
Never had the desire to become a boss, and I'm third generation too. So my my father worked for the police department for just about 25 or so years. My grandfather also worked for the police department, and I actually have my grandfather's detective shield from 1960. So it's kind of it's a big deal for me to work with Troy and to stay here and have the ability to carry on the family legacy.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. Third generation. Wow. And so, like we were talking before I hit record about, because you are a smaller department. I mean, it's funny you say smaller, but then in context to other agencies, you're massive. 130 sworn people. That's a lot of cops to some agencies, but for a lot, like any agency of a smaller size, you wear a lot of hats. And so you were a sworn patrol officer at the time that you were also the evidence tech, but it sounds like evidence was your collateral assignment was to respond to crime scenes and document the crime scenes and that sort of stuff.
Yes. So we have a department 8-man minimum. So on any shift, we have a minimum of 8 guys working. Most times it's a little bit more than that, but as a person assigned, as an officer assigned to the evidence technician unit, there are 9 evidence technicians that work the department, 3 on each shift, 3 on midnights, 3 on days, and 3 on afternoons. Mm-hmm. So I was an afternoon evidence tech, but if, let's say there were 7 guys on the schedule that night, and then I was the 8th as an evidence technician, I would be pulled from my either citywide or north or south evidence technician spot, and I would be stuck in a patrol zone. So on a good night, I would have the ability to either float the whole city or work half of the city and respond and back up other guys and not be the primary officer to respond to routine patrol calls. But the night of the incident, we were low, so I was removed from the primary evidence tech spot, and I was put in a patrol zone to assist with routine calls.
And up until then, you started in 2008, you said. What was it about patrol that you enjoyed the most?
Just, it was working with the guys, and it was helping decent people, because when you get out of the academy, you're full of just the energy and wanting to fight crime, and you definitely do that. But there's the times where you actually help decent people, and you're not dealing with the worst that society has to offer. When you see it, you make a kid smile, or you help some lady shovel her driveway because she can't, because she's older. Stuff like that, I think, it made the job a little bit more bearable, is that there's still decent people in the world. And as a junior guy, you come out of the academy and you're ready to go, and I think you lose sight of it. You think everybody you're going to deal with is a criminal, and then once you start to get time on and you deal with more people, there still are decent people out there, and it is nice to help them.
Yeah, I think it takes some perspective to remember that we all lose sight of that for a little while. I think it seems like I think everybody has gone through that ebb where it seems like everyone you're dealing with is a criminal or a crook and liar, or and you get to a point, and then at some point we step back and we see the good people. So talk to me about the night of August 22nd, 2015.
So August 22nd, 2015 is one of those days that you remember forever. I remember what I ate for breakfast that morning. I was with my wife, who was 8 months pregnant at the time. And we were at a restaurant in the downtown of the city, and we were having breakfast pizza. And I remember her asking me, and I'll remember it to the day that I die. She says, what happens if you get hurt at work? How do I get notified? I'm like, I don't know. I filled out a form 5 years ago that has your info on it, or that had family's info, and I updated it when we got married. So there's a form they're supposed to follow, and you get called. I don't know. That's all I can tell you. And then fast forward until the start of the shift at 3:30, we have lineup. Roll call comes, and I look around, and it's a Saturday night, and there's nobody there's nobody here. So there's 7 other guys, and there was me. So I get told I have to bid, and I bid Lansingburg or Zone 4, the northernmost part of the city, just because I I wasn't a big, I wasn't a fan of working the South End. The South End it was sprawling. It wasn't as easy to get to places, at least with Lansingburgh and Zone 4. It was a big grid. So it went from 101st to 125th and then 1st to 8th. So you knew where you were going. It was a little bit easier to navigate. So I bid up there and the shift started. There was nothing at lineup and there was nothing at the beginning of the shift that made that night different than any other night that I remember. Even to this day, regular routine calls started coming in, not motor vehicle crashes, nonsense, barking dogs, fights, domestic stuff that you get every single day. There was nothing that made that any different. So we start getting those calls. There was a lull in the night, probably, 7 or 8 o'clock. And they had a concert going on at Powers Park, which is the park in Lansingburgh. So myself and my partner that night, Dave Farah, we go and we just stop out because that's when I do the presentation I have on the shooting. And it's one thing I point out to the guys and girls that I talk to is get out of your car, see the people that you police, that you patrol, that you're a human being. You're not a robot in a patrol car. You get out, you have fun. And we started throwing the football around with the kids. And I remember there was a kid who was playing, I think, for the high school in Lansingburgh. And I think he was one of the quarterbacks. So we were throwing the ball around with him. And it was just it was a good time. It was good to get out and see the kids and see the families and let them know that, we're not here to chase you down and bark orders at you. This is our job. And if I can humanize myself and play football with these kids, that's what I'm going to do. So we do that. There was a hot dog vendor up there. I think I had a bunch of mini loaded hot dogs, which is probably not the best idea. And, we just go about the rest of the shift. A call started coming in. My partner got pulled to take a domestic report at the station. And it was real close to end of shift. So we worked 3:30 to 11:30. We do 8s. And at 10:57, we get a call for an attempted armed carjacking, which came in third party, which we don't get in the city of Troy. We don't get carjackings. It's not a common crime for us. We get everything else. We have homicides, assaults, stabbing, whatever. Every other call that you think of, we get those. But carjackings was not one of those things. And what made it extra odd was that it came in third party.
402 and 301.
402.
301.
114th and 2nd Ave. Caller states a black male wearing a red shirt, black pants, and a do-rag attempted to carjack his friend by gunpoint. No information on the gun. Male is last seen walking eastbound on 114th Street. Again, black male, red shirt, black pants, and a do-rag.
And to this day, I have no idea what the victim was thinking. He's walking out to his car. Male suspect walks up to him, produces a handgun, points at him, says, "Hey man, give me your car." And the victim, he just must have been in a mood and says, "No man, I'm all set." Gets in his car and drives away. And he calls his friend. He's like, "Hey man, this dude just pointed a handgun at me and tried taking my car." And he leaves. He doesn't stick around. He doesn't go down to the police department. He just leaves. So his friend then calls dispatch. So now this is like playing a game of telephone. So dispatch gets the call and they dispatch myself and the only other officer that is in service for the whole north end of the city, Officer Chad Klein, who was working the next zone south in zone 3.
4-2, I copy. Black male, red shirt, black pants, do-rag.
Affirmative. I got no information on the weapon.
Appreciate it. East on 114th, front side.
Correct. 212 copy.
Yeah.
So we get sent up to the call, and as soon as the call comes out, it's a little odd, but I don't blow calls off, so I'm going to go up there. And Officer Klein is probably, I don't know, probably 15, 20 blocks away from the call. I'm probably 10 blocks. So I'm not blowing up there, lights and sirens. I'm not going on the red. I'm not driving crazy. I'm driving up normal because I know that Officer Klein is a decent distance up behind me, and he's my only car for backup for the entire north end of the city.
423, what's your location? Passing 112. Check the area first so I come up with them.
So I'm making my way up there, and I think the call is going to be nonsense. I think it's going to be one of those calls that, as we say, it's GOA. It's going on arrival. We get up there all set, and then we're back in service because it's third party. And I'm thinking on my way up there, there's no way this suspect, male black, red top, dark bottom, do-rag, is going to be up there. So, and that comes back, that's that complacency that every single police officer gets. And if they say they don't get complacent, that's nonsense. Every single cop goes through a stint of complacency where they start to get time on the job, and they get comfortable because nothing bad's happened. And you get that way. And I'm not proud of it, but it happens. So I'm making my way up there, and I check for the closing description again. And as soon as I make the intersection, I'm coming up on 2nd Avenue. I see male black, red top, dark bottom, do-rag.
I'm just come around the corner on the 114th. I got a black male, do-rag, ball cap, dark jeans, red t-shirt, walking south on 3rd from 114th.
Right in the middle, almost in the middle of the street. He's acting real weird, so I drive past him. He starts to walk east on 114th Street, so I loop around, and I start to follow him. I'm following him at probably about a block and a half block distance, waiting for Officer Klein to get up. So I radio that I have a male, if it matches the description, and I'm following him, waiting for Klein to get up so we can do a street stop. Because even though I don't think the call, I didn't expect him to be there, I still don't want to stop out with this dude because he's supposed to have a handgun by myself. I mean, we have guys that are there, so I'm going to wait. So I'm following him. He makes a couple turns, and I'm kind of giving out my location and stuff. For wanting to work Lansingburg, my locations that I put over the radio were not even close to being spot on. I was off streets. It was just, I sound like an absolute soup sandwich on the radio, but it was enough that Klein knew where I was. So as he gets up, he's getting up to 112th Street, which is just about a block away from where I was. And I decide, I'm going to stop this dude here. So I get out of my car and I say, "Hey man, Troy, please let me see your hands." And he immediately dives behind a camper that was probably 10 feet from him. So he takes off, dives behind the camper. My gun comes out and I start giving him commands. "Please let me see your hands. Get out from behind the camper." And then he takes off. And I wasn't like Flash Gordon then, but I was okay. I mean, I was decently fast. So the foot chase is on.
He's running. He's going down. He's ducking down. Hold on. Give me the exit. He's running towards 112. That's sport.
It was just another foot chase. It's everyone who's a cop, deputy, it doesn't matter. You get in foot chases. So I start chasing the dude. I'm giving my location and direction over the radio. I think I dropped my radio because I'm probably swearing at him. So I'm screaming at him, please stop, show me your hands. And then the last transmission I give before the incident is he's running through the parking lot at Jimmy's lot. He's running through Jimmy's lot.
Going through Jimmy's lot now.
Which was a pizza shop at the corner of 112th and 5th Ave. And it bordered the East Park Place, which is the road that we were running down. So as I'm chasing him through the alleyway, or through the, it's kind of an alleyway, but it borders the park and it borders Jimmy's Pizza. I come through the parking lot. Officer Klein blows by me in his SUV, flicks his lights on, turns the corner, and I'll remember to the day that I die what I see. I see the suspect, Thaddeus Faison. He reaches center line, pulls out a silver-colored semi-automatic handgun, extends out, and fires one round into the driver's side window of Officer Chad Klein's car.
I've been shot.
Your location.
112th and 5th Ave.
And as I'm running, my gun's already out. I'm ready to roll. And it makes everything slows down. I'm like, did this just really happen? Is this going down right now? So as soon as Officer Klein punches the gas and gets out of my field of fire, I start to engage Mr. Faison. I get 3 rounds or so off on him, and the Kimber 1911 that our SWAT team gets issued, I was using that night, malfunctions. So I get bang, 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 click. Like, well, that's not good. So thankfully, from the training from the team and trying to be a master of my craft, it wasn't anything to fix it. It was gun came up, tap, rack. I got the gun back up and I started to engage him again. Well, in the time it took me to fix the malfunction and to re-engage him, he is able to turn and he starts to fire at me. So now I'm in the middle of a parking lot. There is nothing to my left. There's a couple cars to my right. I don't know if it's because I was more dominant with my right foot. I push off with my right foot and move laterally, going right to left. As soon as I make, I think, a step or two, I get hit with something and I hit the deck. Wasn't like the movies where I fell backwards. It was, I dropped in place.
Shot fired. Officer down. I'm hitting the leg.
I'm like, well, that's not good. Something's going on here. And in that moment, it wasn't even a question of what to do. I immediately set myself up and I started to fire at him between my legs. And so now we're kind of having a seated gun battle because initially, I don't know it at the time, but my first initial few rounds, I strike him in the leg. So he's immobile. So him and I are now having this seated gun battle, probably 10, 15 yards apart. So I realize that I am not in a good spot. So I fired him some more. I do a magazine change, and then I try to get up, and I realize that it's not working. I try like a Hondo roll. Doesn't really work. I try to get up again. I fall like the 3rd or 4th time I'm able to get up, and my legs are jello. And I run about 30 feet, and I fall flat on my face. And yeah, they teach you like break falls and stuff in the academy, and that did not go as planned. I had my gun in my right hand, and the momentum kind of kept carrying me, and it carried me right to the pavement, and I hit the deck. I snapped off the Surefire light system I had on my gun. It went sliding across the parking lot. I injured my left wrist, scraped my knee, scraped my elbows. My gun went sliding, so I quickly scurry over like a baby. I crawl. I grab my gun. I get behind the car. there was a truck that was parked on the right side of the parking lot. So I get behind that and I reach down and I check my legs because I knew something's wrong. I know that I was hit. I don't know where I was hit. I don't know how bad I'm hit. I can still see him underneath the car underneath like the tailgate. I have my eyes on him, so I'm not just solely trying to fix myself, but I know that he's still there, and from what I can see, he's immobile. So I do a blood sweep. I check my legs with my hands, and I come up and I look at my hands, and they're covered in blood. This is a bad day. So luckily for me, probably, I don't know, 5-6 months prior to this, probably at the beginning of the year, I started carrying a cat tourniquet in a 1110 Kydex holder right behind my gun. So tourniquet comes out over my right leg, high and tight. It gets cinched, torqued down, locked in, good to go. I dumped the magazine, which had a couple rounds in it. I should have probably kept it, but it hit the deck. I put a new magazine in, and I slid underneath the car. And I fired 2 final rounds from underneath the car. It was about 34 yards.
Suspect's down on 112. You 10-4? I am right now, but somebody's got to hurry up. I'm away.
And those are the last 2 rounds that I fire. And I'm communicating to Chad Klein, who at this point, after he got shot, he smashed on the gas, drove over some bushes, came down 5th Ave, and has parked at 5th and 112th. This whole gunfight is happening at 112th in the parking lot of Jimmy's Pizza, which is right at the intersection. So he parks just south of the intersection and walks up. And every single time he goes to talk on the radio, he has to put his gun in his left hand and then reach up and grab the radio because his whole left arm, he can't move because that's where the round impacted.
Josh, you okay? I'm hitting both my legs.
It went, he was seated. It went in through the glass into his left shoulder, tore his rotator cuff, chipped his collarbone, and then ended up being lodged up in his trap. So he couldn't move his left arm at all. So he's having to switch between the two, the radio, the gun, the radio, the gun. So him and I are yelling back and forth, hey, are you good? Yeah, I'm good. I'm like, hey, you need to get behind cover. You're kind of out in the open. So he backs up, and we can kind of both see the suspect, Mr. Faison, who's he's not lifeless. He's up, he's sitting, he's moving. There's CCTV footage from the incident from a city camera, and when you review the video, he's up. I think he's on his phone, but he's not mobile, which we can cover him, and we're good. So at this time, initially, right after Officer Klein gets shot, he keys up the radio, and then he lets dispatch know he's been shot. So Sergeant Steve Barker, who is a newly minted sergeant, I think he got promoted in March of that year. He calls what we call red zone, and that means every single person in the city heads that way. So every single police officer in the city is heading that way. Police officers, they called in from adjoining jurisdictions from 1, 2, 3, maybe 6 other agencies. They are now responding as well. So that the first 2 officers that arrive are Officer Ryan Davis and Officer Neil Tenike. They show up. Officer Neil Tenike doesn't even see Mr. Faison lying in the road, almost runs him over with his patrol car, parks his car right at 112th and 5th, and starts to run over to me. So I let him know where I am. I'm strobing with my flashlight. I let him know on the radio where I am. And as he's running towards me, Officer Ryan Davis is addressing Mr. Faison, who is on the ground on 112th Street. And he starts to address him. He walks up, he kicks the gun away, and they try to get him into custody. He has one hand underneath his body. He's not producing it. They ended up, I think he took multiple rides of the taser, and I think 3 officers to get him into custody. Officer Klein walks up, tries to help out with him, and then the ambulance shows up, and he hops in the ambulance and goes to Albany Med. And then shortly after that, I'm picked up and I'm brought there. And then the scene had to get secured. Like I said, officers from every jurisdiction that could send guys to Troy to help out. It was the most intense and largest scene and involved scene that we've had in 40 years in the police department. So it was quite the night.
Say the least. So what, as this is evolving and unfolding, and you're arriving at the scene, and then you end up engaging in the suspect like this, and I didn't realize it was so close initially, like that. You said 10 to 15 yards in a seated gun battle, and that first initial moment when you realized you were shot, I'm wondering if you remember what went through your head, or what was the thought process, or what came up in your mental state.
And like I said, when I talk about this, when I go across the country and I explain, there's three things that you only have three options. You can either lay on the ground and roll around like Ricky Bobby yelling for Tom Cruise. You can try to crawl and get behind cover, or you can get in the fight. And as soon as I got hit and I hit the deck, I knew that I wasn't going to die today. It wasn't an option. My wife's 8 months pregnant. I'm getting home. So you got to stay in the fight. And that was one of the biggest things that kept me going. You're never out of the fight, and you have to do everything you can to stay in it. So as soon as I hit the ground, it wasn't even a question. It was immediately sit up and start putting rounds on him, because if he's got rounds coming on him, and we talk about it when we go to the range and I instruct him, we're just trying to disrupt that OODA loop. And if he can either get struck by gunfire or something can happen where it makes it more difficult for him to shoot me, and that is what I'm going to do.
Hey guys and girls, I'm going to interrupt this episode to talk a little bit more about our sponsor, ProForce. A couple years ago, I was looking online for a new duty gun to replace my aging HK. My agency was taking a long time to close the deal, so I decided to purchase my own Glock Gen 4 G17. I shopped around and found out about ProForce and their insane prices on firearms and accessories, not just from Glock, but from all the major manufacturers, including SIG, Smith & Wesson, Ruger, HK, Colt, Remington, Springfield, and many others. Now, if you're a cop anywhere in Los Angeles or Orange County or even northern San Diego, you already know about ProForce and their amazing deals that they have at their store in Brea. They are only open to first responders, fire, law enforcement, medics, etc., and they are here to serve us. When they reached out to me to talk about working together, I wanted to learn more about them, so I spent a lot of time on the phone with them, because though they're known for their great customer service, I just wanted to make sure they were a right fit for this show. Well, ProForce has 2 retail locations, Orange County, California, and Prescott, Arizona. So if you're near either, make sure you stop in and see their selection. They've gotten rid of those 2 to 3 hour wait times that they kind of became famous for, and they've instituted an appointment system that makes your purchase so much faster. And they've got everything you want to go with your brand new gun: holsters, lights, sights, ammo, and more. Check out their newest deals at proforceonline.com. And in fact, if you go into the store in Brea in Orange County, and tell the clerk you heard this ad, you'll get 20% off a Streamlight TLR1 pistol light. I use the TLR1 myself, and it's an awesome light, so get 20% off yours in store. Just tell the sales associate the secret password, the Squadron. All right, back to the episode. And certainly, it's interesting you talked about how you thought it'd be a nonsense call, because I've done that myself too, and I've gone to things and thought there was nothing there. And for you to turn the corner and then see the guy matching the description in the place where they said he'd be, how much did that get inside your OODA loop, and how did you have to transition from this is a nothing to this is a big something?
So when you come up the road, and I just look to my right and I say, oh, oh man, that's definitely him. Well, this is not a BS call. So I had to, so that's when you start, the adrenaline dump starts to happen, and you start to get into that, you get that amped up feeling like this, this is most likely going to turn into something. So it just switches, and it's hard to explain because it happens so much. And when you're going to calls where it's a domestic, and then it turns into now the party has a knife, and it makes you go from routine call or nonsense call to 100 in that blink of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
I just, your body just, and it's just one of those things. That it's going to develop. You don't know it's going to develop into a gunfight. Maybe you think it's going to go into a foot chase or a fight or something like that. But I think you just, in the back of your head, this is not a fake call. This is not nonsense. This could be the real deal. So it's game time. Get your head into it and play this smart.
And certainly one of the things that would even then, and you elevate it by the fact that he's there, then you elevate it by the fact that when you give him commands, he dives behind cover. Like, well, there's a huge red flag.
Absolutely.
Right? But what struck me in listening to you on your radio that night was how you were able to remain calm. Even in the approach to the suspect, and then in the foot chase, and how you're following him, because like you said, that adrenaline dump and managing that adrenaline at the time. Here you are, the guy's very likely got a gun. You've got him you got the suspect where they said that he was, and it just struck me with how calm you were staying. Do you have a thought process or have training, or what is it that you think has been able to help you so that you stayed so calm in these situations?
I think the biggest reason I didn't want to scream on the radio is because I knew in the back of my head that if I did scream, I would not be able to live that down at my department forever. So I'm just trying to remain calm, because we've had shootings at our agency since then, mm-hmm. and individuals have screamed on the radio to the point where nobody has any idea what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that is the one thing that was going through the back of my head was, I want people to know what's happening. And if I'm screaming on the radio, it doesn't help me and it doesn't help them. Mm-hmm. And if I need help, they gotta be there. So I'm just trying to be calm, and if you start to scream, that makes, if sure. Somebody's screaming on the radio, every responding officer, they're already going to be amped before they even get there. And obviously this is one of those calls where they're going to be amped regardless. But if you are screaming bloody murder on the radio, it changes the dynamic for you, your partner, and every other officer that is going there, just the way that you are on those few seconds when you key up. So that was another big thing.
That is such a good lesson to pass on to people, because you're absolutely right. If you get on the radio jacked up, then that's already to tell your partners that you're already in a bad spot, and they need to get there even faster if it's even possible. But I'm also curious about the tourniquets, because that's such a thing now, appropriately, as proof of your own injury. But walk us through your injuries and what you got transferred to the hospital, and then what was the end result of that, and what was your recovery like?
So I get transferred to the hospital. The tourniquet's on. They give me a couple. I think they gave me a dose of morphine in the ambulance. And we'll just back it up. Before I even leave, it was the only time I ever questioned my own mortality. The fire department captain rolls up, and I stare at him. I say, "Cap, do not BS me. Am I going to die?" And he looks down at my legs. He pulls up my pants. He looks at him. He goes, "I think you're going to be good." So I said, "All right, let's go." So the ambulance driver, I think he was a relatively new firefighter, and the medics in the back were yelling at him to slow down, because obviously if you crash the ambulance, it doesn't help the guy in the back. So he was real nervous, but he did a really good job. So we get to Albany Med, which is the level 1 trauma center for the capital region of New York. and they're looking at my leg, and they take the tourniquet off. So the tourniquet wasn't on for that long, but the round, the 45 ball round that Mr. Faison was shooting in his gun strikes the pavement in front of me as I'm trying to move laterally, and it breaks into two chunks. And the one chunk enters my right leg, and it transects my peroneal artery. It shatters my right fibula and destroys my calf and exits. The left fragment enters the inside of my left leg, messes my calf up just like my right, and then it breaks my left fibula, but doesn't do any blood vessel damage and exits. So I don't know that my right leg is the arterial bleed. It was economy of motion. So the tourniquet was on my right side, so it came off and went on my right leg, and it was good to go. So it was torqued down. It was all set, and get to the hospital, and they take it off shortly after I get there. And they're monitoring my legs for pressure, because gunshot wounds do a tremendous amount of damage to soft tissue. So they're watching for swelling in my legs, and unfortunately my legs continue to swell, and they swell and swell and swell. And then when the attending doctor comes in the next morning, and I don't remember any of this, this is all from my wife, they look at my legs and they say he has to go into surgery right now. So they prep me for surgery, and come to find out, if they didn't do the surgery that morning, I would have lost my right leg that night.
Jeez.
Yeah. So I go into surgery, and they do an emergency bilateral fasciotomy. So a fasciotomy, they take scalpels for the most part, and they run down each side of your leg to relieve the pressure that is building up from the trauma. And when they open up the leg, and the pressure, which was after the tourniquet was taken off, that pressure was kind of sealing in the peroneal artery, it opens it back up, and I start to bleed out on the operating table. So I get 2 blood transfusions. They put a stent in and a bunch of surgical clips. The vascular group that came in emergency, they patch everything up, good to go, take the stent out, and my legs were left open. And I think you saw them on probably North American Rescue. You saw them on their page. They were left open for a couple of days and they packed them, and they just to get the pressure and the swelling down. That eventually they stitched them up like Edward Scissorhands style, and that's how they were. So they sewed them up, and probably the most humbling thing about this entire incident was finding out that your legs don't work and you can't walk. So learning how to move, like, because at the time I had some serious nerve damage, so I couldn't curl my toes, I couldn't move my ankle, I had no flexion. So my left leg was a little bit better than my right leg, but my right leg was like a paperweight. So I had to. They tried crutches. I couldn't. I was an absolute mess on crutches. I think when I was in OTPT, I almost fell down like the mini flight of stairs they had. So I was all set with crutches. So I decided a walker was probably the best. So I had a walker for a while, and I would kind of scoot around with my left foot. My right foot would kind of hobble, but there was really no movement. And then fast forward a few weeks, movement starts to come back a little bit. And I'm starting to wear, because you couldn't wear shoes. I couldn't wear shoes because the nerve pain was so bad. I would have nerve pain in the middle of the night that would like wake me up, that it felt like somebody was stabbing the bottom of my foot with an ice pick. So, and the entire bottom of my right foot was numb. So I could step on a needle, and it would I wouldn't feel it. The sensation is sort of come back a little bit. It's still numb now, but it's not as like I can at least feel like I know my foot's in the gas pedal. I know it's in the brake, so that's good. But then it was like I had on a 10-inch piece of foam on the bottom. I couldn't feel anything. So eventually, I find that I can wear Crocs. So I start to wear Crocs, and those are the only shoes that I can wear for months. And I eventually able to transition to a cane. And the thing that I noticed is going to the grocery store now with my wife and infant son is the dirty looks that you get from older folks when they see a late 20-year-old dude get out of a car in a handicap spot and walk around with a cane, because they think I don't know if they think I'm faking or I'm making it up, but they would like scowls. I would get the dirtiest looks from people, riding around in the scooter at the grocery store because it hurt so much to walk. So I'll never forget that. I'll remember that forever. The looks that people give you because they think that you're faking and you're making up your injury. So it went from Crocs, and the cane, and then eventually I was able to dump the cane. I had a decent limp. I did a lot of pool therapy and PT and OT, and they started to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then my brother, who's a personal trainer, really helped me out and got me back in the gym and got me strong and back to where I was. And I was able to pass a functional capacity test to make sure that I could perform the job. And I was able to come back a year and a half later and pass the PT test to get back on the SWAT team, and ended up making the detective bureau. So the recovery was that was a real general overview of the recovery, but it was not a fun time.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around a couple different parts of this. And if I understand you correctly, in the moments after and around your surgery, they had to slice your leg open on both sides to relieve the pressure. So I'm thinking while you're talking about that, and forgive the comparison, but like taking a hot dog and slicing it down both sides and splitting the skin open, or the casing. Am I thinking that correctly?
100%. 100%.
And I'm not a squeamish dude, but the idea of having your legs sliced open like that on purpose and then left open for days on end, what was going through your mind at that point while you're sitting in a hospital bed? Did you care about coming back to work at that point? Or do you just want to go home to your family and call it a day in law enforcement? Or what was your mindset like?
So I did. There was a time in the beginning where I thought, this is not fun. This is not good. But luckily the doctors that did the surgery, I mean, they were the best of the best that were at Albany Med. They were lights out. So if that's what had to be done, that's what had to be done. I know they do fasciotomies a lot, so it wasn't like some crazy surgery. It was the first I've ever heard of it, but it is not super common, but it's not like unheard of. So I wasn't too worried about that. It was something to look at my legs, and patrol guys that would sit outside the hospital room, they wanted to come in and look at it, and they would take pictures. And the worst part about all of that was they would have to change the bandages. And it was excruciating. They would have to pack the wound. Well, pack my calf muscle. They would pack it with gauze the entire length. It was it's probably, I don't know, a 12-inch scar on my right leg, and then probably an 8-inch scar on my left leg. They would have it packed with gauze. And then I don't know if it was twice a day or every day, they'd have to come and change it, and then have to pull them out and put new ones in. And it was unbearable. But, around that time and for the next couple of months after, I really thought, I don't know. I question whether my body is going to be well enough for me to come back to work, because there was times in PT where I am telling my foot to curl. I just want to curl. Like if you were to pick up a Lego, my son's Lego, pick it up my toes and put it in my hand, I'm telling my foot to do that, and it is not moving. And the issue with that was the nerve damage, and the nerve doctor that I saw made the analogy, if it's a cable wire and somebody takes the coax line, the metal line that is inside that cable wire, and removes it. So you have the tubing still there, but you don't have the connector inside. Mm-hmm. And it takes extremely long time to come back. And it might not ever come back. So there's still parts of my leg that are numb. like I said, the bottom of my foot's still pretty numb. There's spots that I can poke it with a knife, and I feel like the guy in Mr. Deeds where you just don't feel it. But I can move my feet and I can move my toes now. But there's a point where, I contacted New York State Retirement and I talked to them. I said, listen, what are the options if I have to retire? And with New York State, it is quite the loophole. If you are shot in the line of duty, they do not consider that an accidental injury, which would give me like that 3/4 disability retirement. They call it an inherent risk of the job. So yeah. So if I came out of the station and I slipped on the granite steps and I blew my back out or got in a car accident, those are accidents and I would qualify for 3/4 pay. But getting shot, according to New York State, is an inherent risk of the job. And it would have been a massive, 5-year-long fight for me to get that retirement. So it really, unfortunately, it wasn't an option. So it was either retire at whatever pay I was making, which wasn't a ton, or go back, fight to get back to work.
Wow. Wait for New York State to support you doing that. What, during that time, and you touched on that, there were certainly some dark times. You had a new baby on the way. How long were you in the hospital before you were released to outpatient care?
So I was in the hospital from Saturday night, Sunday morning. I was there for the full week, and they actually wanted to discharge me that Friday. And I remember having the conversation with the doctors, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable, nor do I think I'm ready to go home. So they kept me the weekend, and I left that following Monday. And I was released to my house, and I had OT and PT come, and they came in until I was well enough to I had a driver, so I was lucky enough. The department was really good. Initially, after the incident, I had an officer assigned to me, so I had a cop that was assigned to me all day, and then they would have an officer assigned to me on the afternoon shift and overnight. So there was always somebody there. And then during the day, they would be able to drive me to appointments and whatever I needed to do. So it was a long 8 days where my 8-month pregnant wife is sleeping on a couch in the hospital room. She's sleeping on a bed. It just the roles were unfortunately reversed, and you don't want your pregnant wife taking care of you when she's about to give birth. You want to do everything you can to take care of her. So it was definitely tough. But the thing that I think that got me through and didn't let me fall down the rabbit hole of, we talk about all the time, PTSD, and that's a big thing. And I am one of the fortunate ones. I do not have PTSD. That doesn't mean that I might not get it. I was presenting in Connecticut, and I was talking to a couple doctors they study PTSD, and this is what they do. And it could be 20 years down the road. I could be at the grocery store and somebody slams a freezer door, and then boom, everything comes flood back. But for me, for right now, I don't have the issues. I don't have the nightmares. I don't have continually thinking about it unless I'm presenting on it or talking to somebody about it. But for the most part, it's not a daily occurrence, and it's not a daily reminder. And I'm incredibly lucky, and I think that helped out a lot, because if that coupled with the baby and trying to help my wife, and it could have been very dark, and it could have been very difficult for me. But thank God that I did not have issues with that. And when I talk about the story and to guys and girls that work in this profession, if something happens, and you don't even have to be the officer involved. We've had on other serious incidents where officers that were responding officers have had issues with that call.
Sure.
And for guys and girls to not feel that they can talk about that and seek help is such a disservice to us in law enforcement, because suicide is I think it's the number one killer of law enforcement nationwide. So and locally, I mean, New York City's, they've had 3 officers kill themselves in the last month, I think. So for us not to be able to talk about this and talk about PTSD and just make it okay for people to get help is an absolute tragedy. So I'm lucky that I do not have any lasting injuries or issues mentally or anything. But if people do, I wish if they listen to it and they are going through some stuff and they want to talk. I mean, I'll give whoever my contact info. They can reach out to me and talk. It's something that needs to be done, and people need to find help if they are going through a tough time.
Did you ever feel guilty about being shot? And I guess what I mean is, so I'll share an experience I've talked about on this show, but I had a 2-month-old son at home when I had a mountain biking accident and broke my back, and I celebrate the anniversary of that accident as my Alive Day, because I'm convinced that had I landed a couple inches to the left or right, I would have snapped my neck and been dead, because of how my helmet shattered. Anyway, so my wife's at home. I'm in the hospital. My wife's at home with a young baby. And I'm just empathizing with that experience of feeling like you're stuck in this hospital bed. Your wife is 8 months pregnant, which automatically means she's uncomfortable and stressed, and all these things are going on. And so I don't know. That's why I asked the question, I guess.
So I don't know if it's guilt, but you feel bad. And when I do the presentation and I talk about it, the hardest thing for me to talk about, and I get choked up sometimes talking about when I go wherever I am, is talking about my wife and talking about how she was notified. Because when we talk about that notification, she wasn't notified the way that she was supposed to be notified, and I think that makes it that much harder. She was notified by friends from work, I should say spouses of coworkers, showed up at the house, and they said, "Hey, Nicole," they're banging on the door, and say, "Hey, Josh has been shot." They don't know my condition. They don't know if I'm dead. They don't know anything. But now my wife is now in panic mode,
right?
Going to the hospital, and that is the hardest thing for me to talk about is that, because they don't sign up for this job.
Right.
They don't. We sign up for that, and it's just one of those things that it's so much more difficult for them to comprehend than it is for us.
Yeah, I had a similar experience because my accident happened. I don't want to say similar, but I mean the same thing, where my accident happened in our jurisdiction. My search and rescue team came out and scooped me up, and my partners were there, and trying to do the right thing or help out. 2 of them came over to my house to let my wife know that I wasn't going to be home on time, and here she sees 2 uniformed officers walking up the driveway. And, luckily everything I did I was off duty and everything, but of course she thought the worst right away as well. It's that, and I just felt awful. Yeah. But,
yeah, cause you do, because you're like, I couldn't walk around, hold my son.
Right.
I'm scooting around on my butt, I'm not,
you have a brand new baby.
I couldn't help out. Exactly. You can't help out as much as you want. And my parents were kind of in the same boat, how they were notified. And the hardest part about the entire incident was, even though my father was in the job, my mother wasn't. And he wasn't hurt. It was his son that is hurt, because it was his son that followed in his steps. And that is the hardest part about it, is even though he signed up for it, and I signed up for it, he didn't sign up to have his son hurt. So you definitely feel responsible, but you get through it, and you have to fight through it, and you have to talk about it. And once you get to a point where, like, now my wife is okay talking about it. For a while, it was difficult. It's one of those things that you don't expect. Like, I didn't expect to ever be involved in a shooting. That I expected that if I was involved in an incident like this, that I would be okay. And I hope to God that if I was put in this situation, that my training would kick in and I would perform to a standard that I would hope that I would. And I'm glad that I did. And it just, at some point, it comes full circle. You kind of get back to the way it was before. And even though, you are forever changed by this incident, you can make it through it. And that goes, it goes for them as well. So.
You know, we and you just touched on it a little bit, but we just had a guest on the show, Charlie Plum, who was a Vietnam POW Top Gun pilot. Amazing guy. Spent 6 years in a POW camp in Vietnam. And he's got a great saying that he said on the show, which is, adversity is a terrible thing to waste. And so I wonder if you've ever reflected on the experience, the pain, everything about the nerve pain and the adrenaline dump, everything from the adrenaline dump of the gunfight to the nerve pain and learning how to use your legs again, to fighting to come back to work, and then not only fighting just to come back to work, but getting back to the SWAT team you were on before and passing those enhanced PT tests like that. That's a lot of adversity for one guy to deal with early in life. You know, it really is. And you throw the managing a relationship and managing being a new father on top of that. And man, I'm just struck by how you navigated that adversity. And what have you ever given thought to the lessons learned from that you can impart to some of the other people out there that are listening to this that might be dealing with something on their own?
Absolutely. So and he makes a good point, because that adversity and getting through all that is what allows me to do this, is to talk to guys like you and to be able to spread this message. And it's, there's a cop down in Florida that I follow on social media that, he has a saying that it's not about you anymore. And it's not, it's about the guys that you work with, and it's about coming home to your family. And if you think like that, everything you do, whether it's at home, it's for your family, and you're going to have selfish moments, and everyone does, but everything you do should be about your family. And everything you do at work is about the person you're trying to help, or whatever actions you have. Hopefully it is to help your fellow cops, or to help somebody you're dealing with, because at the end of the day, you take this profession and you take that oath, and you are now putting your life below other people's. So you just have to understand that all of that adversity and everything that you deal with, it is your job to make it through. You unfortunately don't have the luxury to succumb to that, because if you have a family at home that needs you, you have to make it through that. If you have a partner that his life is on the line, you have to make it through that. You have to do what you can to help him. And the same goes for people that you are trying to help at work. And just understanding that you have to, at the end of the day, you just have to do it. And it's just something that when I talk to, and I do this presentation for a lot of recruits for various different academies, when you start your shift and you do whatever you have to do, your job is to always, and we always say your job is to always come home. But in that time that you're there, whatever you do, you have to do it with integrity, and you have to be the best person that you can be. But it is no longer about you. You wear the uniform, you put the shield on, whatever shield it is, a star, a shield, whatever badge, it is not about you. And you have to understand that, because everything you do has a consequence. And for people to waste this profession on ill-fated ventures is also a tragedy, because there's someone out there who would love to do this job, would love to help people and do whatever they can do to put their life on the line to help somebody that they don't know. So people just need to understand that, and fellow cops need to understand that when you go to work, everything you do is for the most part is going to be for somebody else. And that other person could be your family. So you just have to continually remind yourself that I'm going home tonight. I'm doing what I can to help these people while I'm here because it's about them. It's not about me. And when I go home, it's about my family. Because the most important thing in the world is your family. I don't take overtime. A lot of guys take overtime. I'd rather take time off and be home. I love my job, and I love being on the team, but I love my family more. So at the end of the day, my family will always come first. And that's hard for guys when they start to get on the job and they start to have a family, and they want to work the overtime shift and do this and do that. It's at least for me, my priority was always for them, it was always to be home as much as I could. So my family is the most important thing, and everything I do is for them. So.
Yeah, that's use the phrase on the show a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with it, be the one. And comes from a quote from a Greek philosopher from Heraclitus, who says that, and he's giving the speech about the army and the kind of people that make up the army. And of course, this is,
I know that's the exact quote.
You know the quote?
Absolutely.
So I'll share it with everyone who isn't familiar with it. But it says, out of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't even be there. 80 are just targets. 9 are the real fighters, and we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But the one is a true warrior, and he will be the one to bring the others back. And so I talk about the one, and that's the one who brings the other people back, the other warriors. And I share that in the context of every officer is the one in relation to the public, but also we can be the one within our own agency, and we can be the example and set the example for the others. And what you were just saying right there strikes me as just a better explanation of being the one than I've ever come up with. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. So there's another quote. So and I have it at the end of my presentation, and it was put, this Instagram page. I think the Instagram page is Daily Stoic. Yeah. And it was put on to me by a good friend of mine, Brian Murphy. And if you don't know Brian Murphy's story, I hope that you guys do after this, because he is one of the most unbelievable people I've ever met in my life. He was involved in an incident in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. He was confronted with a real bad dude, and he soaked up a lot of lead, and he stayed in the fight. And his story is unbelievable. And if you guys Google him, Google him. He goes all across the country. He does a presentation on it. He's a phenomenal guy, but he put me in touch with this page. And the quote is from Marcus Aurelius, one of the emperors of Rome. And the quote goes, "It's unfortunate that this has happened. No, it's fortunate that this has happened, and I've remained unharmed by it." So there's a little bit more to the quote. That was a kind of a summarized version, but that's how you have to think about it. And that goes back to that adversity. And you could go through all the adversity in the world, and if it just drags you down and you turn into a ball of mush, you are no good to anybody. And if getting through that adversity means you have to talk to somebody, you have to get help, it doesn't matter. You are getting through that. And again, at the end of the day, your job is to get through that for the people that are in your life, whether it's your family, the people you work with, or the people you are working for. That is what you have to do.
I love it. Josh, you mentioned that you give this presentation around the country. Where can people find out more if they want you to come and share this with their agency?
They can shoot me an email. They can shoot me an email at my personal email. It's my first initial last name, so jcomitale@gmail.com. I love doing it. I'm hoping to be back out at NTOA this year. I just got to work out some scheduling stuff, but I love doing it. And if a part of the presentation can change the way somebody does anything they do at work, or the way they carry a tourniquet, or just having them carry a tourniquet, or seek out some training, or just ignite that mindset. Because I talk about that combat mindset, and that's huge, and it's so important. And anything that you pick up, or you think what I did was terrible, it changes the way you do something, or you take away something from the presentation. That is the only reason I do it, and I love doing it. So if they want me to, please shoot me an email, and we'll be in contact.
Spell your last name too, J.
It is J, C as in Charlie, O, M as in Mike, I, T as in Tom, ALE @gmail.com. So jcomitale @gmail.com.
Josh, thanks for being willing to come on and share the story with us. When I learned more, when I watched the video, when I listened to the tape, it just struck me as such a great lesson for all of us. And we had not spoken in person prior to hitting record today, and all I had to go on was some newspaper articles, like I said, the radio transmissions, and then that closed circuit TV footage. And sometimes you don't know the person behind the actions, or you often don't. I certainly, but it's always fun to learn more about them, and it's fun and fun's not even the right word. Inspirational, really, and motivating to learn about not only how you had the will to survive and push through that specific gunfight and how just a few minutes changed your life, but then what you've done with it since then and how you've used that to then again be the one and push us all forward and push us all to be just a little bit better. And I think that's fantastic. So thank you for what you do. Thanks for your time today, and thank you for your service to the people of Troy.
I appreciate the invite. It's an honor beyond. So I just want to say thanks again. It was been great. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Squad Room. If you like what you heard today and you got something else out of this episode, please do two things. One is share it with somebody you think needs to hear this information, that needs to hear this inspiring story from Josh about how he persevered through such a traumatic event. And two, give us a rating on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever they call it now, or on the podcast player of your choice, and share it with people who you think would get something of value out of this. Now, Josh's story to me really connects with this idea of badges that we talk about. Badges, beliefs, actions, discipline, goals, emotions, and service. And Josh really struck me as being completely in alignment in all those ways. And he's got a clear vision of the kind of officer that he wants to be, the kind of father he wants to be, and he's got his goals, and he's used his discipline to make sure that his beliefs and actions are in alignment. And really a fantastic example for other officers out there to follow. Now, I talked about some ways that you might be able to learn how you can support the show, so here are a few. First, everybody shops on Amazon, right? We all do. I just bought a brand new water filter for my kitchen sink on Amazon. Now, here's how you can help support the show. If you go to thesquadroom.net/Amazon, and you use that link before you buy anything on Amazon, it doesn't have to be cop related, but you use that link, it does something for us called an affiliate. And that affiliate is that it gives us a little kickback from your purchase, acknowledging that you came to Amazon through this site. And it doesn't raise the price on anything you purchase. It comes out of Amazon's share, and they're big, they can afford it. But it really does help us to get some equipment and travel and do some of the things that we're trying to accomplish here. So that's the easiest thing, thesquadroom.net/Amazon. And if you go through that link every time you purchase on Amazon, you really are helping the show out. It's the easiest way to help, and it doesn't cost you any money. Also, if you are a lover of Ranger Up clothing, you can go to rangerup.com. And if you use the coupon code TheSquadRoom, all one word, you can get 10% off your order. They also share some love with us if you order through us. You can also go to thesquadroom.net/support, and you'll see all of these there as well. But use that coupon code TheSquadRoom to get 10% off at Ranger Up. Now, if you're looking for one of the best fitting ballistic helmet I've ever worn, but certainly a great ballistic helmet that exceeds NIJ standards and won't break your back. It won't break your back either because it is light and it won't break your neck. But check out hardheadveterans.com and use the coupon code SQUADROOM to get $20 off a helmet. It's fantastic. I really love my helmet, and their quality stuff. They make stuff as good as the other guys, but they make it with your wallet in mind. So that coupon code is SQUADROOM, and you get $20 off. Now, another one that I love is Onnit. Onnit is awesome. Onnit's been a supporter of the show, and if you go through that squadroom.net/support to get to our page. Then you can go and purchase on it, and you get 10% off of some things and 15% off other things. And you can get your kettlebells and your maces or your Alpha Brain, which is what I love, and I make sure I take before I do any promotional testing. And that's another great way to help support the show. And again, follow us on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram at The Squad Room. On Facebook, we have our group for members to share information and share ideas and have a conversation that is very supportive and very encouraging. So you can check us out on Facebook as well. And until next time, take care of each other and stay safe.